Good morning everybody, this is Olly Richards here, back with another rule of language learning, your go-to source, your Bible if you like, for how to learn a new language the right way. Or at least in a way that's not totally useless. Do you like the sound of that? Well then, subscribe to this channel right now because we're going to hit 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and quite frankly, I'm going to need every bit of help I can get. Now, back in rule 5. You may remember that I mentioned a Spanish friend of mine, Tomas, who taught me how to politely offend people in Spanish, and for that I will be eternally grateful. If you don't remember that phrase, then go back and check out rule number 5 because it's a good one. There is a lot more to say about this particular guy, and we will be coming back to him in this series many times, mark my words. But probably the most impressive thing about Tomas is that he's the single best communicator I've ever met in my life. And I discovered this the day that I met him at university, which happened to be his very first week in London. I met him on a particularly drunken night at about 2 o'clock in the morning when he was trying to get back across London from our student union to his flat in Earl's Court, which is in West London, but he had no idea how to get there, and his English at the time was so bad that he could barely formulate the question he needed to find out how to get home. But what struck me at the time was that despite his really dodgy English, he managed to get all the information that he needed. He managed to make it home apparently as well, which is always nice. Now, in the following weeks, when I saw him around college, I started to pay attention to him and how he behaved, because I found him very, very interesting. I was amazed to see that after just a couple of weeks, he seemed to know everybody in the university, and everybody knew him. It was quite incredible. He would be walking down the corridor and people would call out his name as he walked past. "Hey Tomas, how's it going?" He had far more friends than me, despite the fact that he could hardly speak English. And so anyway, we became friends, and we'd often go out around London at the weekend. And every time we went out, without fail, we would meet so many random people. And these people that we would meet, they would have a really good time, and we would become friends. And those new friends would invite us to parties, and on it went. And when I think about it, some of my closest friends that I met during those crazy nights out in London came from these interactions with Tomas. And this taught me an absolutely incredible lesson about human communication and how it relates to learning languages. Because let me tell you this, after you have seen someone go out and meet hundreds of people before your very eyes, in spite of a massive language barrier, you realize one fundamentally important lesson. It's not about your language skills. In fact, nobody cares about your language skills. It may be important to you to conjugate your verb tables correctly and to get your tenses right, but do you think anybody else cares? They don't. When you're face to face with someone you meet for the first time, the only thing they're thinking about is whether you seem like a fun or interesting person, or whether you're a little crazy and they should run a mile. Basically, whether they should stop and spend any time talking to you or not. And here's the thing, when people are making those snap decisions about whether you're crazy or not, it's much more about their body language, the look in their eyes, the warmth they convey, and other things like that. Things that have nothing to do with whether you used the right form of the past tense. But us language learners, what are we thinking about when we speak a foreign language? The big danger is that we're stuck thinking about whether we're speaking accurately or not, making mistakes or not, and all this stuff that the person listening couldn't care less about. Think about it for a second. When was the last time you met someone who wasn't a native English speaker and sat analysing their English as you spoke to them? Unless you were a language geek like me, I'd say probably never. You were thinking much more about whether they seemed like a nice person or not. Now obviously it is desirable to speak a language better, given the choice, but let's not get carried away. I've often noticed a phenomenon where I'm at my most confident in a new language right at the start, when I only know the basics, maybe after a few weeks of study. It's something I call the honeymoon period, when I don't know what I don't know, and I'm just thrilled at being able to actually communicate with somebody in a new language. But often, as I get more advanced in a language, I get more caught up in my own head, thinking about grammar and vocabulary and so on. Have you ever had this experience? Of starting out confidently and then gradually doubting yourself more and more and more? I think it's quite likely that you have. But by far the worst thing to happen is what happens to many new language learners who never actually begin speaking with people in the first place because they worry about making mistakes. You wouldn't believe the number of times people have written to me asking questions like, "But Olly, how can I speak when I don't know the grammar yet?" Just remember, this is nothing more than an intellectual objection. You don't need correct grammar to communicate. You really don't. Back in the real world, I consider myself incredibly lucky to have known someone like Tomás at the age that I did, because the things that I learned from him have proved to be an incredibly valuable mental tool that I've used throughout my life. Whenever I find myself worrying about speaking another language, worrying about my level, about making mistakes, or worrying what these people think about my language level, I cast my mind back to these crazy nights with Tomás where we would meet thousands of people in a night, randomly in the queue for a taxi or an airport lounge or at the top of the Eiffel Tower or what. We would make friends and bond over this human experience. The place we were, the people around us, the small details that could form the basis of communication. The power of looking somebody in the eye, of smiling. Just using a few words in the language and then being open to see what comes back and just going with it. Because here's the thing, whatever you're going through with your language learning, this is something that is happening in your head. The worries in your mind, they're intellectual worries. Linguistic challenges that bear no resemblance to the reality in front of you. You're only thinking about grammar because your teacher set you some homework or you found that grammar in your textbook. Now, there's an old dictum in the jazz world, which is practice as hard as you can in your own time so that you can forget it all when you walk onto the stage. And this is how I think about language learning. However hard you've been working in the classroom, forget it all when it comes time to speak. Look into the eyes of the person you're talking to, smile, and do your best to communicate with them in whichever way your heart tells you. You have my permission to completely forget your verb tables, your word order, your cases, your particles. They don't matter. And crucially, they won't help you be any more human with the person that you're speaking to. As you're talking, remember that the person in front of you is asking themselves simply whether you are an interesting person, a good person, an exciting person, someone they should invest in a relationship with. And you are. I know you're amazing because otherwise you wouldn't be watching this YouTube channel. So don't deprive them of the opportunity to get to know you. Ladies and gentlemen, please hit the like button on this video if you enjoyed it, and remember, nobody cares about your language skills. Thanks for checking out the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did enjoy it and you'd like me to continue this series of the rules of language learning, then you can let me know by liking this video. Also, if you'd like to be notified when I upload new videos every week, then you can subscribe to the channel using the big red button below, and the videos will pop right up in your news feed.